Hi everyone, and welcome to the recording for DevTool Diaries. Today, I'm joined by the wonderful Elena, and how we'll start is we'll ask you to introduce yourself, your career so far, and give me a bit of insight to your current role in your career.
Hello. So my name is Elena Grahovac. I'm the director of engineering at FerretDB, where we are dedicated to build an awesome, exciting open source MongoDB alternative. And I've been in web development since 2007, I think, when I joined like a small project as a web developer for the first time. And since then, I tried different roles, and I was focused on backend engineering, for example. Then I was also focused on infrastructure and probably on various mixes of those two topics. Probably I should also say that I'm passionate about few areas: open source, the Go programming language, DevOps culture, communities, and I would say overall development experience. And again, I'm a manager, so I work with people. That's also what I like. I like to see how people grow professionally, what people do during their career, and probably this is why I became a manager.
Love that. Absolute pleasure to have you on the pod today as well. Lots of topics that we will deep dive into, but yeah, exactly why we wanted to speak to you today. DevOps, developer experience, Golang, people management. So let's get into it. Um, so FerretDB, right? You mentioned a little bit about it, a MongoDB alternative, open source as well. Like, what is it that brought you to FerretDB in the first place?
So I already mentioned that I have a few passions, and I think at FerretDB we actually have a mix of all those things, all those topics. And I think that's the main reason why I joined FerretDB. And so, what I personally believe in is that the role of open source is crucial in the tech currently nowadays. And the goal of FerretDB is to basically bring a fresh perspective to those who love MongoDB because of their flexibility. Like, developer experience, if we talk about MongoDB, is really great. This is like really easy to start using MongoDB. It is really easy to continue using MongoDB. It really brings a lot of things apart from it not being open sourced. So we want to make an alternative for those who need an open source solution and yeah, can enjoy the flexibility of MongoDB queries, for example.
Love it. Amazing. It's good to have a super clear goal. So cool. Um, so you mentioned already, right? Your background started as a software engineer as well, but have always been very passionate about developer experience and DevOps culture as well. Really keen to hear from you what you think the most important traits are for a positive DevOps culture when you're thinking about developer experience and developer productivity.
So I was introduced to the concept of DevOps more than 10 years ago, and it was done by the infrastructure team at the place where I worked then. And it was introduced to me as a culture when infrastructure people are kind and show empathy towards developers, and they understand the needs of developers, the problems of developers, and they try to do like everything to satisfy their needs and their expectations and those things. And it sounded really great, it sounded wonderful, but I always thought like, can developers also do something towards infrastructure people? If they are so kind, can we also be kind towards them? And I always believed that both parties should contribute to DevOps culture. I still believe in it. I still believe that DevOps culture is not a one-way street, and everyone should contribute. And then yeah, we just want to make our business better. We want to make deliverables faster and probably with better qualities, and so at the end we all want to reach the same goal. So yeah, developers should contribute as well, but if we talk about such contributions, we should also understand that developers need more than just commitment to contribute. It's not enough to just follow some practices or just like say, okay, I really support those principles. And so what we can do to help developers, we can help them with right tooling, with the tools that can actually help them to support those practices and those principles. And this is where the concept of developer experience comes to the play. And personally, I think it actually begins from the moment when we want to hire a new developer. That's like when developer experience, developer journey starts. And yeah, it lasts through the whole career of that developer in our team while they are with us on that journey. And so, yeah, it means that creating a positive DevOps culture and like a good DevOps culture is also about providing developers with suitable tools, with suitable environment, and it's a collaborative effort. And yes, it requires a lot of empathy from both sides. And also, it is important to measure developer productivity. So if you know the metrics, if you know how to collect those metrics, if you analyze those metrics regularly, we can find ways to continuously improve developer experience in the team and the company.
Absolutely incredible insight there. You're right. It's about working together and all sides being aligned as well. And I speak to lots of people who speak about the importance of hiring for that culture on both the DevOps and the infrastructure and the software engineering side to ensure that cohesion and you're working together. And most important thing is everyone's happy and good developer experience and productivity, right? So some absolutely incredible points there as well. Um, moving on, right? I think it's really important to be able to amplify the voices of underrepresented people in technical leadership, which is why I was so excited to have you on the pod as well. And you've been in a leadership position for the past 4 years now as well. We talk about high performance a lot, but we also talk about inclusivity and belonging. What have you seen in your times? Like, what are the most important things that managers should do to foster a culture of both high performance and inclusivity?
I think such culture is a complex component and many things contribute into it. Personally, I would start from the environment, and this is also how I start a new team. I ensure that there is psychological safety in the team, in the group, and everyone feels safe, heard, respected, and people can bring their true selves at work. This is also very important. And for example, so like the question is, okay, how to make such a culture? For example, when I interview candidates, I ask them how they would describe their ideal work environment. So then I can hear about their needs first of all, and also I can hear about things they consider important. So those are probably also the things they contribute to. So it's important to check what people mention, actually, those psychological safety and what like people hear each other, and then they are ready to contribute to it, hopefully, as well. Also, yeah, I think it's important to have some values and guiding principles. Companies quite often have like company values, but I also believe in team values. Who we are as a team, what behavior we support, what behavior we actually want to avoid or not accept at all. And then again, it's important to check what we actually behave according to that behavior. What's interesting is those principles can help improve feedback culture, because quite often when we want to give feedback, we need some foundation. Why we want to give that feedback? And then if someone doesn't behave according to our principles, we can say, okay, there was that particular behavior, and that's like our value, and it seems that your behavior didn't really follow the value. Let's talk about it. So it could be like a really nice introduction into a feedback session. Then also, because I already said that I'm really interested in people's motivation, I believe that for the manager, it is important to understand what motivates each individual report that the manager has. And like someone is motivated by recognition or by appreciation of their work, and someone is looking for professional development, career opportunities, and some people want to have freedom. So like freedom is the most important for them. They want to have their own goals, they want to make their own decisions, and someone really just want to be accepted. And there are like many different motivators we can come up with. And so to me it is important to ensure that company goals, department goals, team goals are also in line with those individual people's goals. So like everyone wins, and then everyone is motivated and everyone wants to bring the results. Again, feedback culture plays a significant role here. So feedback culture is a hard topic because it's not enough to say, okay, we have like, quarterly based feedback sessions and everyone leaves feedback to everyone. It's not enough. People kind of need to feel they want to give feedback, and it's also important to be able to receive feedback. So how we establish that culture, how we support people to give feedback, to receive feedback, to work with feedback. And also, probably following the topic of those motivations, I also believe in one more thing. It's called superpower. So I believe that each person has some superpower. And also, if you talk about feedback, quite often the feedback we receive is about like, okay, those are your strengths, those are your weaknesses. You should focus on your weaknesses to improve them. But then we actually forget about that concept of superpower, and our strengths is the superpower. And so, while yes, we might need to improve the other things, it is important to ensure that we still have time and focus and capacity to improve that superpower as well. So, like, people can really shine. And yeah, it's crucial to show that we support these things. And then again, we know what are the very special things about each individual in the team and how they can be like really a star about those things they're interested in. So it's like, again, supports their motivation, and plus they can contribute the most. And yeah, those things I think are also important.
Incredible points. Lots to consider, right? It's about individuals, bringing them together in a cohesive team. I love what you said about honest feedback, but empowering the team to be able to give that feedback as well. There's definitely some really good points in there that I think all managers can take on and implement within their teams as well. So thank you so much for that as well. Leads quite nicely to the next point, right? Lots of folk speak to me about wanting to move from individual contributor into that management role. And like you've just given an example too, there are tons and tons of different things to consider on how to be a great manager and how to build your team to be successful and to be happy and productive as well. What would you say are like the biggest challenges that you face going from that IC role into management?
I think initially my transition from an AC to a manager was quite smooth because I was interested in management related topics, and I found myself shifting naturally towards these types of tasks. And yeah, like I just started taking more leadership opportunities, responsibilities, and it's important to mention that here I received a lot of support from mentors and from the community, from people who already had such a journey, who already transitioned to managers. But when I took the role of full-time manager, I started realizing something, that it's not enough to just take some tasks or responsibilities or some other things. It is important to build a platform for yourself, like a platform or a framework that can guide you in different situations, that can guide you on a daily basis, but that can also help you with the strategy. And now, after a few years, I see that building that platform is an ongoing process, and it is very individual. It depends on a particular company you work for. It depends on you as a manager, who you are as a manager. So I think that was like the most challenging thing, and it involves understanding of various areas. So we talked about people management a bit, like how it is important to motivate the team and other things, but it also, with that framework, it also includes relationships with the business, relationships with your peers, maybe some product management, project management, technical things. It is also important to be responsible for yourself, because if you are not responsible for yourself, how can you be responsible for the other things? And so I think what being a manager, it's not only about execution of tasks or even not about creation of tasks. It's rather about having that platform. It's rather about understanding of requirements, of expectations, and what tools, techniques, strategies can help you support those requirements, those expectations. And yeah, I think my personal journey towards manager was not just with evolution of personality or evolution of skills. It was that ongoing commitment to actually build that platform, to understand who I am, to understand the business better, to understand customers, stakeholders, my team, those things.
Love that. I think the biggest takeaway is it's not going to be amazing overnight. Keep working on it, keep iterating, listen to your peers, work out what works for you, and be comfortable with being uncomfortable, perhaps.
Yeah. It's also about understanding of your superpower, because it's easier
Yeah,
to notice other people's superpower, but what is yours?
yeah, I love that. And always got to advocate for yourself in this as well. You're there for a reason. So I love that. Really cool. Something else we spoke about before, Elena, was the fact that you'd worked in quite a lot of bigger businesses and more like larger established businesses, and FerretDB is a bit of a smaller business as well. Could you give the listeners a little bit of insight to your background, and then what advice you might give to people if they're considering joining a smaller business if they've only been in larger ones before?
So I think it is really important to understand the difference between bigger company and a startup that was just founded. And such a move is like a really huge decision. It's like a large story, and it is important to understand the pros and cons. And actually, I think that startups are not for everyone, because you really need to be ready for some flexibility, maybe for some instability, for the other things. In bigger companies, there are quite a lot of processes usually, and it's hard to bring changes because you need to somehow satisfy all those processes. Sometimes you need to have a lot of approvals, or even if you want to bring an idea how to make something better, you need to write an RFC, and then you need to convince people that your idea is worth it. But when people join small startups, like early startups, they expect to have a bigger impact, to bring ideas, to influence, like in all the topics that are possible in a small startup, to change the culture, to improve the culture, to actually build the culture probably. And yeah, of course, there are those opportunities, but they are not coming for free, and so it is really important to understand what will be the trade-offs. Probably about joining a particular company, it is important to do some research. What is this company doing? Is it stable? What are the values? What are the principles? What is the mission? What is the culture? And also, it is important to do some research about yourself to understand, can you align with like dynamic nature of startups, for example, what you can sacrifice, what you cannot sacrifice. And then, yeah, at the interview, for example, it is possible to have some fair, honest discussions about those topics.
I love that. It's cool to hear. I, as a recruiter, hear a lot of fear from folk about joining early stage startups. And you're right, you've got to think what's important to you. Is it going to be of interest to yourself as well? Yeah, lots of people tell me they have a little bit of fear about joining a startup. And you're right, you've got to really think about, is it right for you as well? What would you say you've learned the most about yourself since changing from a bigger company into a startup?
That's a really interesting question. I think I'm still the same person. I still think I'm the same manager who I was. I have the same values. I support my new teams the same way I supported my previous teams. The learnings are probably about how fast things can change. Because, yeah, like even working in companies, quite often we see that, like, one quarter we focus on one thing, next quarter we decide that some other thing is more important. But at the startup, things change quickly and they can change dramatically. So it is important to somehow continue being attached to the goal, to the business. And like I mentioned before, I have a framework or like a foundation to ensure that I still understand business needs, but I still understand the community, maybe, for example, the potential customers, my team. And so I think my biggest learning is that it's actually not enough to have that foundation. It is important to regularly work with it and check, okay, do I still understand what we do here, why we do it, what we do next, how can I support my team, because some changes happened and now like we have to remove the code that we had, like, I know, like we actually had such a situation quite recently. We had some version of backend, like very initial version that I built. It worked quite nicely, okay, but then we decided we want a better backend because we want to bring more flexibility to offer more options how to run our product. And so we had to get rid of the old code and write quite a lot of new code. And of course, for some people, especially maybe more junior people, it is an important change because it's like they worked on something and now this work is like not visible anymore. It's gone. So I have to explain that this is a regular thing, a normal thing, it happens, and our ultimate goal is to bring the best experience. And so it means that yes, we might want to rewrite everything we wrote yesterday, and we might want to rewrite it 10 times, and it's fine. And you still make the difference, and you still bring the value, you still are a valuable contributor.
That's a very, very interesting point you bring up there. that recalibration, isn't it? And refinement and just, yeah, making sure everyone's in line with it. So awesome. Thank you for sharing. Um, really want to touch on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging a little bit more now, as well. And been in tech for a little while now, right? We all know that for years and years there's been a big diversity disparity across all areas of tech, but really keen to hear from yourself, like what changes you've seen in regards to DE&I since you started working in tech.
So, this is quite a sensitive topic, and I will talk about my personal experience. I know everyone's experience is different, so that's like what I saw, what I felt, what I heard. When I initially entered the tech industry, I think there were not any discussions about things like diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. And at least in the space I was part of, it was just non-existent. Nobody questioned it. Maybe some people would just ask, "Oh, like there are like fewer female developers than male developers," or "Oh, female developers are rare," but without like any questions, like why do we want to change it? Is it fine? What's happening? Nothing was questioned. But now I see that there are some changes that are happening over time, and these topics become critical, and these topics are being asked everywhere now. So I think that's an important change, and you can hear a lot of conversations about it, and a lot of companies really contribute to improve the situation regarding those topics. I think for me personally, the most important realization about diversity was that diversity is not just an ethical thing, but diversity actually helps businesses, and this is necessary for business. And when we mention diversity, we actually want to have diversity of opinions, diversity of experiences, just because we want to make a better product. And the more different people we have in a team, the better our product will be. Also, initially, the topic was probably mostly about gender diversity. If you hear diversity, you automatically think, okay, it's like about gender. How many women we have? How many like software engineers women we have in our company? But now we can also see that some progress has been made in this direction, and we see that diversity is like a spectrum of identities and personalities. Again, if we ask ourselves what's the current state, we probably cannot say, oh, it's like perfect. Yes, we know everything about diversity. We know how to build diverse companies, how to build diverse teams, cultures. No, we should acknowledge that the state is not perfect, but also it is important to understand those positive shifts and actually celebrate those positive shifts and learn from it and what helps us make better teams, better companies, and then yeah, maybe we can continue improving the state of diversity in the tech industry this way.
I love that. Focus on the positives. There's always more to be done, but we do need to celebrate how far we've come. And like, even for myself, working in tech recruitment for 5 years, like when you say people really focused on gender diversity, I saw that a lot, but the conversation has shifted. Diversity isn't just gender, it is so many different facets as well. And you're right, the most important thing is difference of opinion, different backgrounds, different lived experiences. So when you're building a product, you've got different mindsets and your product's going to appeal to different people, right? Like the bottom line is ethically it's super important, but if you want to build a great product, then you need to be passionate about having different people building your product. So yeah, love celebrating the wins on that as well. Um, let's speak about management again, and in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, we all know there are tons of studies, right, that underrepresented people still aren't in as many leadership positions in comparison to their counterparts. This is something that tons of businesses want to change as well, but we speak to underrepresented folk all the time, and sometimes they're a little bit worried. So what advice would you give to folk, and particularly underrepresented people in tech who want to move into management?
Starting such a journey is a rewarding experience, I might say, especially if you want to be a manager. But of course, it comes with challenges for all people, not only for people from underrepresented groups. But yes, probably quite often people from underrepresented groups suffer the most. Still, I believe my advice will be for everyone. So, I already talked about people a lot, so I will start from people again. I think it is really important to establish the right network. So, you might want to learn from the experience of the other colleagues at your workplace or from the experience of the other managers in the industry overall. It might make sense to find a mentor, someone who can help you understand some things or answer your questions actually, because probably when people start such journey, there is a lot of questions initially. And yeah, that's like the key: people, the right people. And luckily, we have a lot of wonderful people in tech. And again, I already mentioned that I had great mentors in the companies I worked for, and they don't have to be exactly the same people as you. Maybe it's even better if they are different. uh, there could be some people from HR department, for example, who can help you with communication and those things, or those can be some people from leadership positions but not from tech that can help you establish leadership related things. And of course, yes, people from tech are also very, very valuable. So yeah, that's like the foundation, the right network. Then also it is important to understand what skills you already have and what skills you still need to build, because obviously pure technical skills are not enough. We need leadership, we need communication, project management maybe. So it might make sense to somehow assess yourself and understand what you need to do, what you want to build. And there are various ways how things can be learned. They can be learned from experience just by taking tasks related to those skills. They can be learned from books, courses, mentors. A plenty of possibilities are there, and I think it is important to understand what works for you specifically, because for some people it's easier to learn by reading a book, but for some people it's easier to learn by doing actually a task. Also, quite often, and this is also from my experience, I was such a person as well. I see what people don't ask. People don't say what they want to become managers. They don't ask how to become managers, and it is important to express the interest. Sometimes it's really scary, and sometimes it's really hard to come to your manager and say, "Oh, I want to be a manager too." But again, from my experience, well, again, you need to understand who your manager are. Are you safe to talk about those things? And hopefully you are, and if not, who you can talk to instead your manager maybe. But yeah, sometimes it's like hard for the manager to guess that okay, those people want to be managers, don't want to be managers. I specifically ask people I work with how do they see their career, because again, as a manager, I'm actually lucky and happy to have people who can take some of my responsibilities. So I'm super happy to share my responsibilities, and if someone wants to be a manager, I can delegate some management related tasks to them and they can learn from it, and I can have more time for the other things, which is also really great. So yeah, saying that you want to be a manager is also important. And also I think it is important to understand the challenges, to kind of figure out what challenges you might meet when you do a transition into management. Maybe it might make sense to come up with some like roadmap or some plan how you're going to transition. What are your expectations? What do you want in 5 years? Like, not a lot of people like this question, but actually this is a very helpful question, because if you don't understand who you want to be, it's really hard to become that person. Like, you randomly try some things and no, I don't believe it will work fast. So it's faster when you have a plan. If you understand who can help you to execute that plan, if you see what kind of opportunities you have at your current work, or sometimes, unfortunately, there are not many opportunities, then you should start seeking for those opportunities outside. So, yeah, I think there are many things that contribute to it. People, having a plan, expressing your interest, checking your skills, and again, I don't think there is any difference between people from underrepresented groups and people who are not from underrepresented groups. Those things should work for both directions. I know that for people from underrepresented groups can face some challenges. Yes, we talked about diversity and how better it becomes, but still it's not perfect. So yeah, having a great network is probably the key.
Some great points there as well. And yeah, your network's so important, isn't it? Lean on people you know, ask for advice. But I really love about what you said about having a plan. Management's not easy. Everyone would do it if it was easy, wouldn't they? Lots of different folks to rely on and make sure everyone's happy. So having a plan, expectations, and support network sounds so important. But I really love what you said about assessing yourself. You need to have really good emotional intelligence, don't you, to be able to support the team and move them forward. So some absolutely amazing points there as well. Next area I want to touch on is just in terms of building a diverse team as well, one of the first touch points someone might have when they're looking for a new role with their new manager is the interview process, right? And we speak to tons of people who may have a homogeneous team, a homogeneous company, because they are quite small. Like, how can other hiring managers best ensure they have as inclusive of an interview process as possible?
So the interviewing process starts from defining the position we want to interview for, and when we define that position, when we understand what kind of skills we need, it is important to focus on the essential skills. So we should avoid broad language, for example. We should really focus on particular things we are looking for this position, and what are the exact criteria we are looking for. Then the next step, after we understand what is the position, is to create a job postings. And again, we need to take a moment, or maybe like a few moments, to ensure that the language of such postings is inclusive. And again, that we only include the really necessary things, but we don't include extra things that are not so related. And actually, there are now some tools that can check for biased language in such postings. So it's important to use those tools, like all the possible things. Also, I personally like adding some like encouraging statements, like apply even if you don't meet all the requirements, because that really brings the difference. We really can see like a broader loop of candidates in such case, and like it's important to show that we are ready to open doors for potential. Okay, then when we have job postings, we can start looking for candidates. So we need to ensure that during the interview we stay focused on those particular requirements, on those particular skills we are looking for. And it is important that we don't ask people to do tasks, or we don't ask questions that are not related to the role. As quite often, unfortunately, I see companies ask strange things that are not related to what we do completely. They probably heard that some people ask it in the interview, so okay, let's ask it as well. No, it's not a good way. It's better to understand what exactly you are looking for and what questions can check those skills. If you talk about technical interview, for example, I am personally against of take-home tasks because they are time-consuming usually, and this is a disadvantage for the company, I believe, because we automatically reduce our pool of candidates as those who are parents who have family responsibilities. They don't have that much time for take-home tasks, especially if they trying to pass interview in different companies. So I think it's important to find a way to assess tech skills without having big, complicated, long tasks. And last but not least, we also need to check cultural fit, because yes, like technical skills, of course, are obviously important for tech companies, but I already mentioned that I love asking about environment, because I want to check that the person who joins us supports the same environment principles as the rest of the team. And this way, we can check that the person who we interview will contribute to the culture of diversity, support those things, and actually add something new, maybe even. Because yes, when we check candidates, maybe we don't always have very diverse pool of candidates, but at least if you hire someone who can bring something new, who can add like some value in how we establish diverse culture, that's already a great thing. And also, one thing that I think companies also sometimes forget is that the panel of people who interview, the interviewers, they should be diverse as well. It is important to show that we don't only talk about diversity, but we are actually diverse. So our interviewers are diverse. And again, diverse interviewers bring different perspectives. They can see different things about the candidates. Maybe someone notices something that nobody else notices, and then our decision about hiring a person is more unbiased at the end.
Some amazing points, and I really resonate with what you say about that first point with the job description. I had a partner years ago who had written the word veteran on their job description, and I was like, okay, if we look at the history of folk who are in the armed forces, it's typically men, so I'm not sure using Czech veteran is going to appeal to the most diverse audience. And there is a really good free website called Textio, which I will link on the bottom of this podcast when we post it for folks to have a look at. Put your job descriptions in there, and it will pull out any super gendered words for you as well. But yeah, some great points, right? And you're right about that technical take home. You have to think of working parents as well. It's not easy to fit time in as well, but some really good points there. The last question I just want to ask you is, you mentioned about having a diverse panel, which is so important. I get this question a lot from folk. They're like, "Oh, we've just built our business. We've just started. Unfortunately, we've got a very homogeneous group of the six of us who are working here. Like, what can we do to? We really want to ensure that we've got some diverse people coming into the business. It's really important to us. Like, what can we do? How can we tackle it? So, I wonder if you've got any thought process towards that point as well."
That's an interesting thing because at FerretDB I think we were quite lucky to have. I can't say that we have like a perfectly diverse team, but we have quite a diverse team in terms of gender diversity, in terms of nationalities, where people are from, where people live. But I don't know how it happened. It looks to me that it happened naturally. And maybe it is important to start like when you start a startup. Okay, yes, I totally understand. You probably attract people who you already know, and you know that those people will help you build a really great startup, a really great company. But it's easier if you have diversity from the beginning. So maybe one tip would be to extend your network and check if your network is diverse enough. And if you start a startup today, if you want to start a new company today, who will be people you are going to attract? Are they from different backgrounds with different experience? Are they different people, or are they all like you? And if they are more like all like you probably should do something with your network. You probably should start interacting with people from different groups.
It's true, and there are plenty of groups out there focused on supporting underrepresented individuals as well. Yeah, it's an interesting point, isn't it? I think if you're genuinely very passionate about ensuring you've got a diverse team, and you've gone through unconscious bias training and interview training, and if you've utilized the help of other folk, you just have to own it. Unfortunately, like we've just formed and this is where we're at, but this is what we've done to and this is what we're going to do to try and improve it and be able to support you and create that psychologically safe space as well. But you make a good point. When you look at the tech landscape, it is very homogeneous, and when you're building a new tool, you go to your existing network, and unfortunately the majority of tech still is quite male driven, so it's no surprise that we have startups and founding teams of homogeneous groups as well. And I have this conversation with people often, like, referral hiring is great for knowing good people, but it's pretty terrible for hiring a more diverse group of people, because most universities and most workforces are homogeneous group of people still. So super interesting points, and yeah, something that we're all going to have to look to focus on moving forward as well. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Elena. Last question from me is just, what are you most excited about in the tech world for 2024? And if there's any last bits you would like to add before we sign off, please go ahead.
Well, I think I'm excited about what we are going to do at FerretDB because
Nice.
I'm really committed to like support the company I work for, to bring some value. So yeah, we have some interesting plans. I can't talk about them yet, unfortunately. We have actually a few different directions we are going to try, and I really hope that we will be able to like we already offer actually our product, and there are already people and companies who work with FerretDB, and there are even some software as a service platforms that offer FerretDB, so it's possible to use it already as is. But we are going to make that experience even better, and so yeah, I think that's about my personal expectations for 2024. That more and more developers will start using FerretDB.
I love that. Good. And folk who are listening, connect with Elena, go check out the product, see what the plans are. I'm looking forward to watching on and cheering from the sidelines as well. But Elena, it's been an absolute pleasure. thank you so much for taking part, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great to talk to you.